My name is Lucy. To my parents, I have always been a nobody, a disappointment from the moment I was born. In their perfect world, where everything was measured by social status, brilliant achievements, and a flawless appearance, I was a regrettable mistake. I didn't have their fair hair and blue eyes. I didn't possess their innate grace or their talent for charming the right people. I was a quiet, pensive girl with a mop of unruly dark hair and eyes that, in their words, lacked a spark. My father, Richard, was a successful investment banker, a man for whom the numbers in an account were more important than human feelings. My mother, Eleonora, was a socialite whose life consisted of charity balls, fashion shows, and maintaining the impeccable facade of their perfect family. My older brother, James, was their pride and joy, the captain of the football team, a straight-A student, who had inherited their looks and their ambition. He was the golden boy, and I was his shadow. From my earliest childhood, I was surrounded by an atmosphere of cold neglect. My drawings were never hung on the refrigerator. My school successes went unnoticed. Any achievement of mine was compared to James's and invariably lost. Lucy, why can't you be like your brother? Try harder, you're embarrassing the family. With your looks and personality, you should at least be smart, but you don't even have that. These phrases were the soundtrack of my childhood. They never hit me. Their cruelty was more sophisticated. They ignored me, pretending I didn't exist. At the dinner table, all conversations were held through me, as if I were an invisible piece of furniture. Guests who came to our house quickly learned this pattern of behavior. I became a ghost in my own home. The only place I felt alive was the library. Books became my friends, my teachers, and my solace. I devoured everything from classic literature to textbooks on physics and economics. In the world of knowledge, I found what I so desperately lacked at home, an acknowledgement of my worth. I secretly participated in online academic competitions, solved complex problems, and wrote essays under a pseudonym, winning contests my parents would never know about. I created a second, secret life for myself, where I was not a nobody, but someone significant. Years went by. James was accepted into a prestigious university, and my parents threw a grand party. I, as always, was an inconspicuous shadow, serving drinks and clearing empty glasses. That evening, I overheard a conversation between my mother and one of her friends. "What about Lucy?" the friend asked. "Where is she planning to apply?" My mother laughed her signature cold laugh. "Oh, my dear, let's not dwell on sad things. The most important thing for her is to marry someone unassuming who can support her. We don't expect anything more from her. She is our little disappointment." Those words were the final straw. Something inside me broke at that moment. The pain, resentment, and humiliation that had been building for years forged into a cold, calculated rage. I realized I could no longer be a victim. I would have my revenge. I would destroy their perfect world, built on lies and hypocrisy, and I would make them see who I had truly become. My plan for revenge was long-term and required patience. I knew their weak spots. Their flawless image and financial well-being were paramount to them. It was precisely on these points that I decided to strike. The first step was education. I secretly applied to the world's top universities for programs in economics and computer science, using my numerous victories in competitions and contests. I received full scholarships to several of them but chose the one known for its research in cybersecurity and financial technology. I told my parents I had enrolled in a modest local college, which perfectly matched their expectations. They didn't even bother to check. At university, I threw myself into my studies. I was the top student in my class but kept it quiet. I built connections, worked on my own projects, and established a reputation in the niche circles of IT geniuses. I learned to hack the most secure systems, analyze financial markets, and predict their fluctuations with astonishing accuracy. I created several anonymous blogs where I published my forecasts. Soon, I caught the attention of major players on Wall Street. Under the pseudonym Cassandra, I became one of the most influential financial analysts, whose advice was worth millions. No one knew that behind that name was a quiet girl whom her own parents considered worthless. While I was building my secret empire, I continued to play the role of the gray mouse at home. I would return to my parents' house for the holidays, where nothing had changed. They weren't interested in my studies or my life. To them, I was still an empty space. This worked to my advantage. My father often boasted about his successes at work. His company was preparing for a major merger that was supposed to bring him a huge profit and a new level in his career. He was at the peak of his triumph, and I knew this would be the perfect moment to strike. Using my skills, I gained access to his work files. What I discovered exceeded all my expectations. His entire brilliant career was built on insider trading, financial fraud, and deceiving clients. The deal he was so proud of was another scam, designed to ruin thousands of small investors while enriching him and his partners. I began to act. Anonymously, through my channels, I started leaking information about his fraudulent activities. At first, it was small hints in my blogs that made the market nervous. Then, I passed a package of documents with irrefutable evidence to the Securities Commission and several major financial publications. I did it in such a way that suspicion fell on one of his closest partners, with whom he had a strained relationship. The effect was like a bombshell. A massive scandal erupted. The company's stock plummeted. An investigation was launched. My father was in a panic. He lost everything: money, reputation, and his position in society. His name was dragged through the mud. He tried to blame his partner, but the evidence was undeniable. He was facing trial and prison. My mother was hysterical. Her perfect world was collapsing before her eyes. Her friends turned their backs on her, and the invitations to social events stopped coming. Their bank accounts were frozen. They had to sell their luxurious house to cover legal costs. They found themselves at the very bottom, the place from which they had once looked down on the rest of the world with contempt. James, their golden boy, suffered too. His father's reputation cast a shadow on him. He had to drop out of his prestigious university. His brilliant future was erased. He couldn't cope with the loss of status and fell into a depression. And then, the day of reckoning arrived. I arranged to meet them at a cheap cafe on the outskirts of the city. They came, aged, broken, dressed in modest clothes that were so out of place with their usual image. They looked at me with bewilderment, not understanding why I had summoned them. I silently placed a tablet on the table and played a video. It was a recording of that very conversation my mother had with her friend at the party all those years ago. "She is our little disappointment." My mother turned pale. My father frowned, still not understanding. "You always considered me a nobody," I began in a calm, steady voice. "You never saw me, never heard me. You created an image of a failure and forced me to live in it. But you were wrong." I opened my bank account on the tablet. The numbers on the screen made them gasp. The sum was astronomical, many times greater than anything they had ever possessed. "This is me," I said. "I am the one who earned this money. I am Cassandra." My father stared at me, his face contorted with horror and disbelief. He understood. He understood everything. "It was you," he rasped. "You orchestrated all of this." "Yes," I nodded. "I showed the world who you really are. You got what you deserved. You spent your whole lives worshipping money and status. And you lost both. And I, your little disappointment, stand before you as a person who achieved everything on her own, without betraying or deceiving anyone. I built my life not because of you, but in spite of you." I stood up to leave. Suddenly, my mother jumped up and grabbed my arm. There were tears in her eyes. "Lucy, my daughter, forgive us," she sobbed. "We were blind. We didn't understand." I looked at her with a cold, detached gaze. Her remorse was as false as her entire life. She was crying not because she realized her guilt, but because she saw a chance for salvation in my money. "It's too late," I said sharply, pulling my hand away. "You had a daughter, but you killed her with your neglect. Goodbye. I walked away without looking back. I felt no joy, no triumph. Only emptiness. My revenge was complete, but it didn't bring the satisfaction I had expected. I had destroyed their lives, but mine had also been poisoned by years of pain and loneliness. I left the city and started a new life. I had money, freedom, and recognition in the professional world. But the wounds in my soul still ached. It took me years of psychotherapy to clear away the rubble left by my parents' neglect. I learned to trust again, to not fear intimacy, and to accept love. It was a long and difficult path, but I met people who helped me heal. Later, I met Mark. He was patient, kind, and saw the light in me even when I couldn't see it myself. With him, I understood for the first time what true, unconditional love was. We got married and had 2 children. I swore to myself that their childhood would be the complete opposite of mine. Their drawings are all over the house. We celebrate their every small victory, and they fall asleep every night knowing they are loved and valued for who they are. I created the family I had always dreamed of, a haven built on respect, warmth, and support. Sometimes, snippets of news about them would reach me. My father, after a short prison sentence, was released a broken man. He died alone of a heart attack in a cheap rented apartment. My mother, having lost everything that gave her life meaning, turned into a bitter, perpetually complaining old woman living on a meager welfare check. James, my golden brother, never recovered from the fall. He drifted through a series of low-paying jobs, blaming me, his father, fate, anyone but himself. They never understood their mistakes, remaining prisoners of their own selfishness and vanity to the very end. I don't regret what I did. It was a cruel but necessary lesson. Their fall became the foundation for my rise. But the real victory didn't come on the day I saw them broken in that cafe. It comes to me every day, when my children hug me, when Mark looks at me with love, when I look in the mirror and see not a little disappointment, but a strong, happy woman. I proved them wrong. But, more importantly, I proved it to myself. I am not a nobody anymore. I am Lucy. And I am the one writing the story of my life. And in this story, there is only room for light and love. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left, and thank you for watching.